Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of 7 Minutes With. I'm Jared Alster, the co-founder at Dune 7, and today I'm excited to have with me Suzanna Chiu of Amadeus Ventures. For those who don't know, Amadeus Ventures is the strategic funding program from Amadeus. It was founded in 2014 and focuses on finding early-stage startups sitting at the crossroads of travel and technology. Since then, Amadeus Ventures has introduced more than 250 startups to the different Amadeus business units and has directly invested in companies such as Flyer, Pana, Airside, and Journera. Welcome, Suzanna, to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jared.
It's my pleasure. So quickly, before we get into the main bit of what I want to talk to you today about, I wanted just to quickly ask about your background, because it's interesting that you come from an M&A and an investment banking world, and this is your first sort of foray into the venture capital space. So I'm just curious from a personal perspective how that's gone and what that transition's been like for you personally.
Absolutely, happy to share. So when I joined Amadeus, I actually was in a team that is more focused on strategic market analysis. But then, so we were in the middle of the discussion of starting a investment program for Amadeus as a corporation. And naturally, once the program was started, I moved into that role. There are a lot of transversal skills between the leverage buyouts and startup VCs. It's the valuation philosophy, the methodologies is the same, but the focus is maybe slightly different. So a lot of the process is the same. Is it about doing due diligence, negotiating documentations, etc. But I would say overall, I really love the job that I'm having right now. It's working with startups, focusing a lot more on innovation, right? Instead of buying and selling companies that are more well established, maybe in a sector that there's a little bit more infrastructure or utility. In tech, working with startups, bringing new things into the different industries. And in this case, for me, it is with travel. I would say, yeah, I've enjoyed every minute of it so far.
Great. Well, thanks for that. So let's get into it then. So I was reading an article, I think now a couple of weeks ago on Crunchbase, which was saying that venture capital investment globally is up 92% in 2021, was up that much in 2021 versus 2020, which I thought was just a shocking stat. So as we're now a quarter or thereabouts into 2022, we've already seen a bit of softening. Do you think that we're due for a larger cooling off period, if you will, or do you think that venture capital investment can sort of stay with that same growth pattern from last year?
Sure. 2021 was a year of record-breaking for many different perspectives. So in this case, I would say it's a high benchmark to beat. From a year 2022 standpoint, especially that in the current environment, we have already seen inflation has gone up in the last 2 quarters, and the Fed has been vocal about the interest rate increase. So in this environment, we have already seen, right, as a capital to maybe moving a little bit back into the fixed income category, then continuing with equity. And so with that trend, I would say, I personally expect the VC activities to come down a little bit for 22, but in the current world, I would say it's hard to say what is normal and what is not, and what actually are the rules of the market anymore. I would say my prediction is as good as yours and as good as anybody's.
Right.
But overall, I would say one thing that I'm quite confident on is about travel. Right, that is the context of the bigger VC market. But for travel, we're definitely seeing more activities. So for VCs, startup investing in year 2022. At the moment, for ventures, we are definitely working on a very strong pipeline. There's a lot of the startups who made it through the pandemic. They have found a way to add value to the ecosystem, either solving an immediate problem or focusing on some core problems that will need to be solved anyway. So in those circumstances, we are definitely seeing a lot of it's a good investment proposals so with solid like KPIs and experiences during the period, and they are all like very investable. I'd say like newer startups, younger startups, we're definitely seeing a few. A bit less, there's a few of them, but I would say like this year, like from the momentum that we are seeing right now, it's encouraging.
Yeah. And just for the audience, just so everyone knows, Amadeus Ventures focuses mostly on early stage companies. Is that correct?
That's correct. But early stage, like we define ourselves as the Series A. Mm-hmm. So it's a stage where the startup will already have a product. So we expect them to have 1 or 2 early customers with some early traction to show. So that is the stage that we like the most, because being a corporate investment program, like our value really is about like the reach, like and also sharing some of our technologies. Yeah. And so at that stage, we feel that like that is where we can add the most value.
Yeah. Great, thanks. So switching gears a little bit, talking about the public markets. So recently, in terms of travel IPOs, other than Airbnb, there's been a lot of talk about how a lot of travel IPOs have underperformed. So when it comes to expectations that the public markets have for these highly valued private companies, how do you think that the sort of, I guess just the performance to date will affect IPO activity in the travel tech sector as we go forward into this year?
Sure, it's an interesting question. So IPO, like it's a mechanism for like the VCs and the private equity funds to be able to have an exit. Now, so pre-pandemic, what we have seen is that we talk a lot about the phenomenon of the unicorns, right? So how many unicorns and the strong growth around the unicorns is because there was a very strong growth in terms of like private funding, raising pretty strong rounds to a lot of the private startups. So with that backdrop, when we got into year 2021, the market condition was perfect, like for like a lot of these companies to go public and such that the VCs and the PEs can get their exits. Right, so looking at the market valuation benchmark at that moment in time from public tech companies, so it makes perfect sense from that perspective, no? And the other factor of it was I would say the strong adoption of the SPAC structure. Mm-hmm. That also helped. It's because like I think like the popularity of it helps start companies to really accelerate the process. Because IPO typically needs a lot of planning. It takes like at least like 18 months to go through all the documentations, etc. So the SPAC process has really helped to speed up a lot of those companies taking advantage of that timing and to be able to exercise that exit. So overall, I would say like it makes a lot of sense as in terms of the number of IPOs that we saw last year. And maybe some of the valuation that was done to perfection in a certain way, like for the VCs and the PEs to get a very good exit, and so it is not only for the travel industry, like so overall, in terms of technology companies, payments companies. So I think we've seen that there are a number of those that may be like the post IPO performance, that the share prices has gone down. That's true. Compare with where, I think
that's a pretty good perspective in that we sometimes in our travel tech silo we get too insular, but you're right in that the macro world also there's been underperformers just like within travel. So
absolutely,
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of a segue coming back to like ventures or Amadeus Ventures, in terms of what we do. Obviously, from a corporate investor standpoint, we focus on generating value, right, with our portfolio companies. So a lot of the work is done pre-IPO. In terms of like introducing them to customers. It's about doing technology integration such that like their implementation timeframe can be shorter. So overall, I'd say those are the work that we would like to be able to help on our portfolio companies, such that when they hit that moment in time when they're ready to exit, there's either there's an IPO or just a traditional trade sale, this is selling back to a corporation, that everybody will feel the results of their hard work. So
Great, thanks. So let's talk about Web3, because I think we have to, with everything swirling around about the metaverse and Web3 and the different applications that founders are building for multiple purposes these days. So when it comes to travel, it seems like there's a few different Web3 focused companies. It's questionable whether they're building actual products of value or not. I think the verdict is largest still out. But from your opinion, what is your opinion in terms of who is actually out there who is developing useful applications of Web3 for the larger travel ecosystem, if you will?
Yeah. So Web3, maybe just to start with, like, let's align on the definition of Web3, right? Because I think it's quite elastic when we talk about Web3, and people tend to interpret it in the context that they are in. No? So to me, it is decentralized internet. I definitely, well, at the moment, I'm not putting metaverse into that mix. So focusing on the decentralized architecture, not as of the internet. So coming in from that perspective, other than the cryptocurrency, so we've seen a few providers are happily accepting cryptocurrencies as a payment method. But other than that, it is true that there have been a lot of experiments, but so far I think we are still experimenting. So we're still in that phase. So Amadeus being a tech company, tech provider in this industry, we've done a lot of the thinking and the testing as well, in terms of what would be the best use case for this particular technology. And from a venture standpoint, we also talk to quite a range of these companies. Overall, if I can summarize it, there are three things, I think. This is over there with the topic of Web3. The first one is around the incremental value, the business value that this technology can bring into the picture, right? Different from the Web 1 and 2, or the more traditional version of the internet, I would say Web3 has the problem of finding a white space, right? So how can we apply a decentralized architecture to solve a problem that is going to be better than what we have today, from a digitalization standpoint, right? And it cannot be just a tiny bit better, right? From a provider, from a user standpoint, if we need to change the architecture, there has to be substantial improvement, from the existing solution. So I'd say that at the moment, it is still the biggest hurdle that I've seen, in terms of solving a problem that hasn't been solved yet, or solving a problem that is substantially better than the existing solution. I'll say that's number one. So the number two is decentralized internet. So by definition is, so you need a couple of players to get together to be able to have a pilot, to test out the concepts and be able to get KPIs. No? So we used to have the term the minimum viable ecosystem. So what would be the number of key players that you can put together to actually get the pilot going and be committed enough to get you to the finish point to be able to get the KPI to prove it. No? So that is a hurdle number two. It's the network effect. So how can you recreate the network effect that is already there? So with the existing business partners, right? So and be able to convince so all the parties to move on, to this new architecture. The last one I was just more general on the technologies. I think that we still have outstanding questions around, is it carbon footprint or is it scalability? So I think we have a few of those outstanding questions. Overall, I would say that we will get there. Web3 will find the use case that it is going to generate value better than the previous version. So I think from our standpoint, we've tried a few of the track and trace use cases, or is it about reconciliation? So say across many different parties. So there are a few use cases that make sense, but so far I would say we haven't reached the stage to say that like absolutely we have nailed it.
So it sounds like mostly we're aligned in that there isn't a single application being developed right now that we think really is solving a problem 10x better than, you know, something else that already isn't to market. Is that fair?
That's a fair comment. So
Okay.
Today, I haven't seen like such a solution yet.
Yep. Very good. So Amadeus Ventures in 2022. Obviously, we're already 3 months in now, almost. But where is your focus in terms of what areas, what sectors, what micro sectors, if you will, of travel technology are you most interested in?
Sure. Like the one topic that is on top of like our agenda, and also we're having a lot of discussion internally as well, is around sustainability. So looking at the bigger landscape and how climate change is impacting all of us, and what the industry can do in general, say to recover better, right? So that's I would say a lot of the thinking that has gone into like this year and last year. And sustainability is definitely on that agenda. So overall within Amadeus is we have established a structured approach to look at sustainability in terms of like how can we incorporate that element into our own solutions, but also like supporting our customers in their sustainability journey. And so overall, to say being the ventures program, to say I'm supporting a lot of like those discussions to see how we can identify partners and even potential investments in startups that can help us on a few of those topics around this is either optimizing existing operations, or is it about offsetting, or is it about like better measurements and shopping and searching. So overall sustainability is a very high priority topic for us. On top of that, for 22, I would say data, AI, machine learning remains like on the desk. So with AI, we definitely see compared to Web3, AI is definitely an area we see production maturity use cases. And so let's say, be it about the better top line optimizations around revenue management, is it about like RPAs on process optimization in the back end on efficiencies? So there are like front end and back end use cases, say leveraging data. No? So from that perspective, we are definitely looking at as many ways to deploy say data-driven solutions as possible across the entire ecosystem. And so on that topic, like we welcome as many ideas and experiments as possible around data analytics.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I was reading another article the other day. It said since January 1, there's been about, I think, 450 million venture capital dollars invested in sustainability as a sort of sector, not just within travel, and obviously travel being such a big part of emissions globally. It's great to hear that you have a focus on that going into the year. So fantastic. Okay, well, we're almost out of time. One last question. Other than your portfolio companies, what other startup that is sort of in our space are you most excited about right now? Yeah.
I thought about it when you pass on this question, no? During the preparation. The one that I think is definitely on our radar screen, and is we believe that there is a strong trend in the growth around it. It is the electric vertical takeoff and landing, like aviation sector. Right. So overall, it makes a lot of sense. It's just that the electric part of it, let's say, that matches the sustainability topic that we discussed before. So the overall, is it about traveler experience? Is it filling in the gap between like the first and last mile? Is it also from a city planning point of view, is it overcoming some of the congestions and problem on the street? So overall, as a urban mobility solution, it just fits in right away. Maybe it is not a 5-year thing. It is more, maybe it is more like 10, 15-year like trend. But so overall, I would say that like it's an exciting trend. And so coming to companies, notice that there are 2 ways looking at it. Like one is like the manufacturers, the research and design. So like players like Joby Aviation in the US, like Lithium in Europe. So I would say those are firms like doing amazing things in pushing the boundary on the technology. And then on the software side, we're also looking at it like from a perspective of like traffic control. How will air traffic control be changed when like we have so many more of these aircrafts like flying in our sky? And how will they work together with the existing like air traffic control systems? So overall, like it's such an interesting topic, and there is a US startup called AirMap that is trying to solve that problem. So yeah, just a couple of names within the space that we feel that like there is something exciting, interesting going on.
Yep, fantastic. We don't yet have flying cars, but we're almost there, huh?
I think we're getting close.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We are out of time, but I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for all of your insights, and I hope to see you soon in New York.
Thank you very much. I look forward to travel again, and definitely looking forward to go to New York and meet the rest of the travel community, really.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Jared.
Bye-bye.